The frost on the windshield was still cracking under my breath when I realized my own son and his wife weren't coming back for me. Still, I kept my palm on that icy glass, letting it sting steady me instead of their betrayal. As the cold spread, it echoed every warning I ignored about the people who shared my blood and my table. While I traced a line through the frost, the truth sharpened clearer than headlights. The same frozen silence spelled out exactly what family meant to them. That's when I decided I'd walk out of that lot and let justice greet them before their celebration cooled. All right, before we dive into this crazy story, do me a favor, subscribe and tell us where you're watching from. Derek did something he hadn't done in months. He showed up early and smiling. "Holiday ride, Mom," he said, filling the doorway, hands jammed in his coat pockets. "Let's get out, clear the air a little." I kept one hand on my walker and studied him. He had that overbright look he used to get before report cards, like he'd already seen the damage. "It's 10 degrees out," I said. "The air can clear itself." Behind him, Megan's SUV idled at the curb, exhaust spilling into the frozen Cleveland night. She sat in the driver's seat, posture straight, watching my house like it owed her something. From the open window, her voice came out forced sunny. "Family talk, Mom, no fights, I swear." "No one swears no fights unless they're expecting one." I almost said no. The house was warm, my shows were recorded. My heart, however, was tired of the tension that leaked into every visit, every phone call about expenses and the future. "Fine," I said, "but I'm wearing the big coat." Derek helped me into my parka, fussing with the zipper, wrapping my scarf like I was made of glass. Guilty careful. I tucked my purse under my arm and followed him out. The cold slapped my face, sharp and punishing. Ice crusted over the sidewalk, glittering under the streetlight. Megan popped out of the SUV, smile already in place. Vanilla perfume hit me before she did. "Here, let me," she said, grabbing my walker and folding it before I could protest. "We'll throw this in the back." "I need that to walk," I snapped. "You'll have it," she said, just getting it out of the way. Derek steadied my elbow as I climbed into the front seat. The leather was stiff and freezing under me. Megan cranked the heat, and a blast of hot air fogged the windshield. "So," she chirped as we pulled away, "I thought we could talk about what's next, for everyone." "The future of the house," Derek added quietly. "Of course, the house." Streetlights slid past in orange streaks. We left the small, close-together homes and turned onto wider, emptier roads, past darkened stores, boarded windows, old shopping centers that had died slowly and publicly. "Where are we going?" I asked. "The mall," Derek said. "They used to put lights up, thought it'd be nice." "They stopped 5 years ago," I said. "You'd know that if you drove by for anything but money." His jaw tightened. Megan's hands flexed on the wheel. The holiday music on the radio faded into static as the city thinned around us. When she turned off the main road, my stomach dropped. No traffic, no houses, just flat, open snow. The abandoned mall rose out of the dark, huge and hollow-eyed. Blank signs, covered entrances, one flickering light over by the loading docks, buzzing like a trapped fly. Megan guided the SUV deep into the empty lot and shifted into park. She turned off the radio. The silence rang. "This is quiet," she said. "We can actually talk." "In the middle of nowhere?" I asked. "Couldn't afford a diner." "It's private," she replied. "No one listening, no neighbors calling your church friends." The wind rocked the car slightly. I could see my breath in the thin fog on the window. Megan unbuckled. "Let's step out for a second, stretch our legs." "It's below freezing," I said again. "Just for a minute," she insisted, and before I could argue more, she'd opened my door. Cold air knifed in, stealing my breath. My eyes watered. My fingers went numb almost instantly. I reached back, feeling for my walker. My hand found only empty space. "Where's my walker?" I asked. "In the back," Megan said from somewhere behind me. "We'll grab it in a second." I tried to plant my feet on the cracked asphalt, knee already throbbing from the cold and the step down. Derek hovered, then stepped back like he couldn't decide whether to catch me or run. "Derek," I said, fighting the wobble in my voice, "get my walker now." He finally looked at me, really looked, and I saw it all at once. The fear, the debt, the decision already made. His lips barely moved. "I'm sorry, Mom," he whispered. Then he shut the door. The sound of the door closing was small, but it hit like a gunshot. For a second I just stared at the dark window, my own face faint in the glass, hat crooked, mouth open. Inside, the dashboard glowed warm, soft orange. I could see the blur of Derek's shoulders, Megan's profile, two shadows inside a world that was still heated and safe. I knocked on the glass with my knuckles. Derek opened the door. The wind answered first. It came howling across that empty Cleveland lot, mean and unbroken, slicing straight through my coat. The air bit my cheeks, crept under my hem, wrapped cold hands around my ribs. I shifted my weight, trying to plant my good foot. My right knee gave out. The pain was blinding, a hot white streak up my leg. I went down hard. The asphalt was rough and frozen, slamming into my hip, my shoulder, my hands. A crust of thin ice shattered under me, sharp pieces dug through my gloves, into my skin. Derek, this time it tore out of me full and raw. I tried to push myself up. My knee screamed, refusing any weight. The world suddenly felt too wide, the lot stretching out in all directions like they'd paved over the horizon. I twisted toward the SUV. They weren't looking at me. Megan's hands moved fast as she talked, her face set in that tight, efficient way she used when she discussed solutions. Derek scrubbed his palms over his eyes, then hit the dashboard once. I saw his mouth moving, but the wind stole the words. My purse, my phone. I patted down my sides, breath catching. Empty, my bag was still on the floorboard where I'd kicked it earlier. They hadn't forgotten it. They'd planned for it. The brake lights flared red, washing the ice around me in bloody color. Then the SUV eased forward, tires crunching over snow. No hesitation, no rolled down window, no "Mom, hang on." They just drove. I watched the red glow shrink, then blend into the dark road beyond the lot. The engine noise faded, leaving me with nothing but the wind and the faint buzz of a dying light over a loading dock. For a heartbeat, I considered it, just lying there, letting the cold crawl its way in, slow and quiet. No more overdue notices. No more thin apologies. No more Megan in my living room saying, "Do you have any idea what long-term care costs?" But I saw Lucas's face in my mind. 12, serious, asking, "Grandma, are you gonna be around when I'm in high school?" I'd told him, "I plan to annoy you for a long time yet." I dug my elbows into the ground and rolled to my stomach. The movement set my heart stuttering in that odd, off-rhythm way. I paused, counted. 1, 2, 3, 4, it steadied. Barely. Ahead, across the empty lot, the loading dock loomed, a slightly darker shape in the dark, crowned with one flickering yellow bulb. It looked like the back of every dirty building I'd ever delivered mail to. Shelter. I started to crawl. The asphalt ripped at my gloves, soaked them through. My knee dragged useless behind me, sending hot spikes of pain with every bump. My breath came out in quick white bursts that vanished instantly. Megan's voice rang in my ears, like she was walking right beside me. "We can't keep doing this, Rosemary. We're trying to build a life and everything is tied up in you. Do you know what that feels like?" Yeah, I knew what it felt like. It felt like this. The loading dock didn't seem to get closer until suddenly it did. The wind eased a little under its shadow. I reached numb fingers toward a broken wooden pallet leaning against the wall, half sunk in dirty snow. I grabbed it and pulled. The wood bit into my palms, a splinter slid into my thumb. Good, pain meant I was still here. Inch by inch, I hauled myself upright until my back hit cold concrete. My legs shook under me, useless as wet paper. For a moment, I just leaned there, shoulders pressed to the wall, chest burning. The world narrowed to my heartbeat and the rattle of that buzzing bulb overhead. My son left me to die, I thought. Not a metaphor, not drama, just fact. My lips felt stiff. I wasn't sure if I was still shivering or if the shaking had gone too deep to see. "Not tonight," I whispered, breath frosting in front of me. "Not like this." Out past the lot, beyond the tangle of dead trees, a thin strip of road glowed with passing headlights, small streaks of white sliding through the night. People, warm cars, someone. I stared at that moving light, then at the ruined pallet under my hands. If I stayed here, I might last longer. If I left, someone might actually see me. My heart thudded hard once, like it was casting a vote. Gripping the pallet until my fingers hurt, I pushed away from the wall and turned, very slowly, to face the open ice between me and that distant strip of life, right as the flickering dock light above me sputtered, dimmed, and went out. When the dock light died, the dark felt like it closed a fist around me. I pushed off the pallet anyway. My legs argued with every inch. The good one locked, the bad one shook under me, but somehow I found upright. Out past the lot, beyond the black shapes of the trees, the main road glowed faint and distant, little streaks of headlights sliding by. That way, I told myself, move. Leavin'. The shelter was like stepping into a blast freezer. The wind hit full force, shoving icy air down my collar, clawing at my ears. I hunched and started that ugly half-limp, half-drag across the open lot. Each step scraped pain out of my knee, each breath felt like inhaling glass. Once my foot hit a hidden rut, I pitched forward, arms flailing, caught myself at the last second. My heart stuttered so hard I had to stop, palm pressed to my chest, counting beats until they stopped skipping. Plant, drag, breathe again. By the time I reached the shallow drop to the roadside ditch, my legs just quit. I sank down hard on the frozen bank, boots skidding into the packed snow below. Cars hissed past, white lights cutting the night, everyone on their way somewhere warm. I raised my arm, slow as if it belonged to someone else, and waved. A sedan blew past, a pickup, another car, no brake lights. Then I heard it, a deeper growl, familiar in my bones, city bus. It rolled into view, big and boxy, interior lights bright. I forced my arm up higher. For a horrible second it looked like it would pass, then the brake lights flared and it eased onto the shoulder, hazards blinking. The doors sighed open, warm, rubber-scented air spilled out. "Ma'am," the driver called, leaning out, "you all right?" Slipped, I managed, "I'm fine." He took one look at me at the dead mall behind and didn't buy a word. "Sit tight," he said, already grabbing his radio. I heard the phrases elder female, no coat support, possible exposure. Blue and red flashed against the trees a few minutes later. A patrol car slid in behind the bus. A woman stepped out, dark jacket, strong walk, hair pulled back. She crossed to me, crouched a little. "I'm Officer Knox," she said, "rough night." "Wrong turn," I lied, got myself stuck. Her flashlight picked out the bruise rising on my cheek, the finger marks blooming on my wrist. Her jaw tightened, she'd seen this kind of wrong turn before. "EMS can warm you up, check that leg," she said. "No hospital," my voice came out steady, "take me home." She studied me, then exhaled through her nose. "Address." I gave it. "Fine," she said, "I'll drive you, but when we get there you're telling me how you really ended up freezing behind a dead mall." As she helped me into the cruiser, one thought burned hot enough to cut through the cold. I had to get through my own front door before Derek and Megan finished celebrating the death they thought they'd already given me. Officer Knox killed the siren a block away, but I still heard the cruiser before I saw my house. My little brick box sat under the street lamp, porch light burning, curtains closed. And behind those curtains, laughter. Not the tense, careful kind, loose, effortless, something clinked glass on glass. Music hummed under it, low and warm. "You live alone, right?" Knox asked quietly. "Most of the time," I said. She pulled to the curb, put the car in park, and studied the house a second too long. "I'll walk you up." "I can manage," I said automatically. "With that knee, humor me." The cold felt meaner now that warmth was so close. Each step up the walkway, my leg tried to quit. Knox's grip on my elbow was steady, professional. As we reached the porch, Megan's voice floated through the door, bright and careless. "I'm just saying, at least it'll look natural. Exposure happens to old people all the time." A little burst of laughter, Derek's lower, uncertain. "Can we not talk about it like that?" he muttered. My hand tightened on the railing. Knox's gaze flicked to my face. "That them?" she asked. "Family," I said. It tasted wrong. She hesitated. "You sure you're okay going in there alone?" I didn't answer, I just unlocked the door. Heat hit me like a wall, wine, butter, one of Megan's expensive candles. I stepped into my own hallway, boots dripping on the mat. The music was louder now, some mellow acoustic thing, the kind they play in coffee shops to make bad news sound poetic. I followed the sound to the living room. They were mid-toast when they saw me. Derek on the couch, socks off, glass in hand. Megan perched on the armrest, legs crossed, hair down, wine glinting in her fingers. My walker sat folded in the corner like a retired witness. "It's almost merciful," Megan was saying, "better than a long drawn out." She turned, saw me, and the sentence died. For a second, nobody moved. The only sound was the song on the speaker and the tick-tick-tick of the wall clock. Derek's glass slipped from his fingers, red wine rushing across my coffee table. He lurched to his feet. "Mom," he croaked, we thought you were." He couldn't finish it. Megan's shock lasted exactly half a heartbeat. Then her face rearranged itself, eyes wide, hand to chest, perfect performance snapping into place. "Oh my God, Rosemary," she breathed, taking a step toward me. "We thought you were resting, we were just waiting for you to wake up." "Don't," I said, voice scrappy. "NG low." Megan froze. Behind me, through the glass of the front door, I saw the shadow of Officer Knox shift on the porch, still there, still close, as my would-be mourners scrambled to pretend they hadn't just been celebrating my convenient death. I didn't argue, not out loud. "I'll make cocoa," Megan chirped behind me. "You love cocoa." "We can call your doctor," Derek added. "Just sit down first, okay?" "I need to change," I said, shrugging out of my wet coat. 10 minutes, then we'll talk." Old habits won out, they let me go. I felt their eyes on my back as I limped down the hall, my knees screaming with every step. In my bedroom, I shut the door and turned the little lock. The lamp's warm light made the bruises on my wrist look worse, fingerprints rising like something trying to surface. I went straight to the closet. Past the everyday sweaters above the shoes, my fingers found cold metal, the lockbox. I dragged it down to the bed, heart pounding harder now than it had in the parking lot. The key hung on its chain against my skin. I slipped it into the lock. Click. Folders all neat, all labeled in my own careful hand. Will updated. Insurance Rosemary. LUCAS Trust. POA REVOKD. I pulled the insurance folder first. The top form was one I knew by heart. Primary beneficiary, LUCAS Hale 70%. Secondary beneficiary, Cuyahoga County Veterans Assistance Fund 30%. Previous beneficiary, Derek Hale removed. Date 2 years ago. I saw it again, that beige office, the hum of a cheap printer, Attorney Samuel Trent pushing the papers toward me. If you're already feeling pressure, he'd said, voice low, you protect yourself now, not when someone else is holding the pen. Back then I'd felt paranoid, half convinced I was being unfair to my own child. Tonight, standing in my bedroom with thawing fingers and a bruised face, paranoid had a different definition. They left me for money that isn't even theirs, I thought. They risked a felony for a payout that skips right over them. The laugh that tried to come up was too sharp to be humor. My phone sat on the nightstand charging. I unplugged it, thumb hovering only a second before I tapped the after-hours number on Trent's card. He picked up on the second ring. Trent. It's Rosemary Hale, I said. I think we've reached the emergency's only part. No gasp, just a shift in his tone, alert and focused. Tell me what happened. I gave him the short version. The drive, the lot, the cold, the officer, the party I'd walked back into. All right, he said. Tomorrow we start filings and freezes. Tonight you write everything down, times, words, anything odd, and don't let them know how much protection you already have. Let them think their plan is still alive. I can do that, I said. I know you can, he replied. You already did the hard part 2 years ago when you signed those forms. We hung up. I closed the lockbox, slid it back on the high shelf, and looked at myself in the mirror, hair wild, bruise blooming, eyes clear. Then I smoothed my sweater, practiced a small, tired smile, and walked back down the hall toward Megan's soft music and Derek's stained socks. Okay, I called lightly as if nothing had happened. How about that family chat about the house? Neither of them knew that every document they'd tried to kill me for was already loaded like a weapon, pointed nowhere near me. The morning after they tried to freeze me to death, my doorbell rang before 8:30. Megan stood on the porch with a casserole dish big enough to feed the Browns' offensive line. Her smile was so wide it looked painful. I made you a breakfast bake, she chirped, sweeping past me into the kitchen. Protein, carbs, all the good stuff, you need your strength. Megan doesn't cook for anyone but herself. Yet for the next week my kitchen turned into her stage, roasts, soups from scratch biscuits. She wiped spotless counters, rearranged my spice rack, narrated every move. Derek hovered in her wake, eyes rimmed red, voice soft. Mom, can we just stop fighting? I can't do all this drama. I just want family harmony, okay? Family harmony sounds lovely, I told him and watched his shoulders sag with relief. I leaned heavier on my walker. I let my knee buckle a little more going up the stairs. Call me if you need the bathroom, Megan would say, all concern. Those steps are dangerous. So one afternoon, I stood at the bottom of the staircase and called her. Megan, could you help me up? I don't feel steady. She was at my side in seconds, one hand on my elbow, the other gripping the rail. You really shouldn't be doing this, she murmured. You'd be safer somewhere with an elevator, a facility, maybe less risk. Maybe, I breathed, letting her pull most of my weight and mentally underlining every word. Friday, Lucas arrived with his backpack and 2 old eyes. He took one look at my bruise and wrapped knee and went quiet in that way that meant something was chewing on him. Look. While Megan was running errands and Derek hid in the kitchen with his phone, we sat at the dining table pretending to do a puzzle. Grandma, he said. Mom keeps saying you won't be around long. He didn't look up. She said Dad has to be patient. I don't know what that means, but I hate it. The piece in my hand snapped in half. That's grown-up talk, I said carefully. Has nothing to do with you, and for the record, I plan on being a nuisance for a good while yet. That night I called Samuel Trent. His voice came on calm, clipped, already moving. I've filed for emergency financial guardianship protections, he said. Your account's your house, nothing significant moves without scrutiny now. Keep acting like you don't know what they did. Let them show the court who they are. 2 days later, the doorbell rang again. This time it was Officer Knox, dusted with snow, hat in hand. Afternoon, Mrs. Hale, just checking on you. I let her in. Her eyes swept the scene in one practice pass. Megan at the stove over a perfect pot roast, Derek twitchy at the table, Lucas stiff beside me, my fresh staircase bruises yellow over purple. Lots of help around here, she said slowly. We're just taking care of Mom, Megan cut in, voice bright. We're here all the time now, she's fragile. Knox's gaze locked on mine. You sure things are okay? She asked quietly, because from the outside it looks like everyone's working real hard to convince me they are. Luca's fingers curled into the back of my sweater. I opened my mouth, feeling every choice I had left line up behind my teeth. Lie again, or finally aim the truth at the two people still smiling in my kitchen. I didn't tell Knox everything. I'm managing, I said instead, writing things down like my lawyer suggested. Her eyes sharpened at the word lawyer. Megan's smile twitched. Derek's knee started bouncing under the table. Good, Knox said, keep doing that. She let the silence stretch just long enough to sting. Patterns matter. After she left, that word stuck to me like a burr. Patterns. The next one showed up that night. I'd left my walker by the bedroom door before my shower, locked into the height I'd used for years. When I opened the bathroom door, steam spilling out, the walker stood where I'd left it. But when I put my weight on it, the hand grips hit lower than they should have. My center of gravity tipped forward hard enough to make my stomach drop. I caught myself on the doorframe, heart banging. Later in bed, I checked the adjustable notches. They'd been moved, not by accident, not one click but two, just enough to send a tired old woman tumbling at 2 a.m. I took pictures, close-ups of the settings, time-stamped on my phone, and wrote it all down in my notebook. Walker lowered between 7:10 p.m. and 8:00 p.m., only Megan present in hallway. The next morning, while Megan clanged around cleaning my room, I sat at the kitchen table and ordered something I never thought I'd need. A tiny camera disguised as a motion sensor. 2-day shipping. America's favorite accomplice. When it arrived, I waited until Derek had taken Lucas to school and Megan was grabbing coffee. I climbed the stepstool slower than I needed to, just in case anyone was watching, and stuck the camera high in the corner of the hallway, angled toward my bedroom door and the walker's usual resting place. The red recording light stayed blessedly invisible unless you knew where to look. The first 2 days, nothing. On the third, while Megan insisted I nap for at least an hour, I left my walker correctly set and pretended to sleep. I heard her soft steps in the hall, the faint rattle of metal. That night after they were gone, I pulled the footage up on my laptop. My hands shook, but not from age. There she was. Megan in my hallway, checking over her shoulder once, toward my closed bedroom door, then bending to my walker. She gripped the legs, thumb pressed to the push buttons, and deliberately dropped each side 2 holes. She stepped back, tilted her head, then nudged it a little closer to the top of the stairs. On screen, she smiled to herself, a tiny, satisfied curve, then she walked away. I paused the video, took a breath that felt too big for my chest, rewound, filmed the screen with my phone just in case anything ever happened to my laptop. I emailed the file to Samuel Trent that night with a 2-line message, thought you should see this. Subject line, pattern. He called before I'd even set the phone down. Mrs. Hale, he said, no preamble, this is more than enough to press charges. Elder endangerment, attempted harm, we don't have to wait for them to try again. I looked down the dark hallway, where my walker sat now with a towel draped over it like a shawl. They already did try again, I said softly, but no, not yet. He sighed, papers rustled on his end. You are not obligated to keep giving them chances to incriminate themselves. A DA would salivate over this video. I'm not giving them chances, I said, I'm giving them rope. A beat of silence, then grudging respect, then keep the camera rolling, and Mrs. Hale, don't ever be alone on those stairs. I don't plan to, I said. A few nights later, the camera caught something else. Derek, alone in my living room, pacing hard enough to blur. Phone pressed to his ear, voice low and raw. I'm telling you I can't wait months, he hissed. They're calling about the car, the cards, everything. You said if I had access to the house we could consolidate. He stopped, listened, ran a shaking hand through his hair. I know what we talked about, he snapped, but things changed, she's still here. My son turned his back to the camera, shoulders nodded, and I watched him choose his next words like they were bullets he couldn't take back. They called it a fresh start dinner. Megan said the words like they were written on a cue card. Tonight is about healing, she announced, laying silverware like we were on a cooking show. No tension, just family. The table had never looked so dressed up. Cloth napkins, my good plates, candles that only come out for holidays. The air smelled like garlic and rosemary chicken, real mashed potatoes, green beans with slivered almonds. All of it from scratch, all of it overdone. Smells wonderful, I said, settling slowly into my chair at the head of the table. My phone sat in my cardigan pocket, recording app already quietly running. Derek hovered near the kitchen doorway, hair damp, shirt buttoned wrong at the cuff. He kept checking the clock over the stove, then his phone, then the clock again. A man waiting for something to happen. Sit, Derek, Megan said through her smile. You're making Mom nervous. Oh, I'm fine, I said, just enjoying the effort. I can't remember the last time anyone fussed over me like this. Megan's eyes flicked to me, trying to read whether that was gratitude or accusation. She decided on gratitude. You deserve it, she said smoothly, taking her seat. After everything, we haven't appreciated you enough. Rehearsed, every word fit too neatly. We ate or pretended to. Megan kept steering the conversation back to the future. How unsafe the neighborhood was getting, how exhausting it must be for me to manage a whole house alone. Derek barely touched his food. He tapped his heel against the linoleum, checked the clock again. Expecting a call, I asked mildly. He jumped, no, just got an early shift tomorrow. Megan shot him a look that said get it together. When the plates were mostly pushed around and the candles had burned low, she stood and brushed imaginary crumbs from her hands. Okay, she said too brightly. Let's get you ready for bed, Rosemary. Big meal, big day. Your heart doesn't need the extra stress. I usually stay up for the 10 o'clock news, I replied. Just tonight, she coaxed. You'll sleep better. She disappeared into the bathroom and came back with my orange pill bottle and a small glass of water. She shook 2 tablets into her palm, then watching my face, she added 2 more. Doctor said you could take an extra if you're anxious, she lied. It'll help you rest. I let my hand tremble as I reached out. My phone recorded the click of pills, her voice every syllable. 4 seems like a lot, I said. You'll be fine, she soothed. You're always so strong. I cupped my hand as if to toss them into my mouth, brought the water up, tilted my head back, swallowed water only. While my chin was up, I slid the pills into my cardigan sleeve with 2 fingers, feeling them catch in the knit. See, Megan said, relieved. You'll be out like a baby. Her eyes moved to Derek, a tiny nod passed between them. Before either of them could say another word, the doorbell rang. All 3 of us froze. It was full dark outside. No one drops by unannounced at 9 on a Tuesday. I'll get it, I said quickly, pushing my chair back. My knee screamed, but fear and spite made a good brace. Megan started to protest, then plastered on her host's smile. I opened the door. Officer Arya Knox stood on my porch, hat in hand, squad car idling at the curb behind her, blue stripe lights off but ready. Evening, Mrs. Hale, she said. Sorry to show up at supper. Dispatch had a neighbor call in a welfare concern, thought I'd swing by. Behind me, I felt Megan and Derek stiffen. Good timing, I said, stepping aside. We were just talking about my health. Knox took 1 step into the hallway, eyes flicking past me to the perfectly set table, the untouched mashed potatoes, Megan's too wide grin. Then she looked down at my hand, the one still half curled around the water glass, cardigan sleeve bunched just enough that the outline of 4 small pills pressed visible against the knit. Knox's eyes lingered on the bulge of pills under my sleeve, then flicked to Megan. That her prescription, she asked lightly. Mind if I see the bottle? Of course, Megan said, a beat too slow. It's just her normal dose, she gets anxious. While Megan hurried to the bathroom cabinet, Knox stepped closer, her voice dropping so low I barely heard it. Get them out of your hand, she murmured. I tipped my palm, 4 white tablets slid into her waiting evidence bag. The plastic crackled once. She snapped it shut and slipped it into her jacket just as Megan reappeared with the orange bottle. 2 at bedtime as needed, Knox read off the label, not 4. Megan forced a laugh. I must have miscounted, We'll sort that out, Knox said, tucking the bottle under her arm. I'm just going to update dispatch, standard welfare check stuff. She stepped back out onto the porch, leaving the door mostly closed. I could hear the low murmur of her voice, the click of the radio. 42 knocks on scene, possible medication misuse, stand by. Lucas padded in from the hall, rubbing his eyes. Grandma, why's the police here again? I pulled him close, just making sure everybody's behaving. In the kitchen, Megan's smile dropped the second Knox's silhouette moved away from the glass. Brilliant, she hissed at Derek. You looked like you were about to confess to murder over mashed potatoes. I'm not the one shoving pills down her throat, he snapped, louder than he meant. I left her in that lot because you said the cold would take care of it. Lucas flinched. I tightened my arm around him and eased us toward the dining room archway, out of sight but not out of earshot. You agreed, Megan shot back. You said we couldn't keep drowning. The house was the only way out. You begged me to find a quiet option. And your big idea was overdosing my mother, his voice cracked. If she didn't freeze, she should have fallen asleep forever, right? That was the plan. On the porch, Knox's shadow went perfectly still. I heard the soft click of her radio again. Dispatch upgrade me. Possible 1016 elder abuse attempted poisoning. Requesting another unit at this address. Inside, Megan's voice dropped, but the panic sharpened it. I've been adjusting those meds for weeks, she hissed. Just enough to keep her out of the way. You're the one who rushed it with the parking lot stunt. For weeks, Derek choked. What if she'd collapsed at Lucas's game in public? What then? She didn't, Megan snapped. Because I was careful. I am not going to prison because you can't keep your cool for one dinner. Lucas pressed his face into my side. Grandma, he whispered, they're talking about killing you. I know, I said quietly, and we're going to make sure the right people hear it. I guided him down the hall to my bedroom. My niece screamed, but adrenaline carried me. The lockbox came down from the closet shelf with a familiar scrape. I laid folders out on the bed, updated will, insurance changes, Lucas's trust, Trent's letters. My hands moved fast, practiced. Hand me that binder, I told Lucas. He passed me the old red 3-ring. I slid in plastic sleeves, filling them with copies, printouts, screenshots. The hallway camera footage was already on a thumb drive. I tucked it into a labeled envelope. Video Walker/PILLS. Last, I grabbed my notebook, pages crowded with dates and quotes. The parking lot, the exposure comment, the lowered Walker. You won't be around long, 4 pills. She should have fallen asleep forever. Each got its own flagged tab. Outside, tires crunched. Blue and red flashed across my bedroom walls as a second cruiser pulled up. Doors slammed, radios crackled. Are they going to jail? Lucas asked, voice tiny. That's up to the law, I said. Our job is to tell the truth and hold on to each other. I tucked the binder under my arm and took his hand. We reached the top of the stairs just as Knox's knock shook the door a second time, harder now. Cleveland PD, her voice rang out steady and hard. Everyone in the living room, we need to talk about what's been happening in this house. Knox's second knock made the glass shiver. Cleveland PD, everyone in the living room. Luca's hand tightened in mine. Grandma. We're done keeping quiet, I said, the red binder under my arm. Megan and Derek were already in the living room, mid-argument. They both went still when they saw the binder. What's that? Megan asked. History, I said. The door opened. Knox stepped in with another officer at her shoulder. Mrs. Hale, have a seat with your grandson, she said. Mr. and Mrs. Hale over by the table, hands visible. Is this necessary, M? Egan demanded. We were having a family dinner. Ma'am, Knox said, I heard enough on your porch to justify a SWAT team. Don't push it. Derek's eyes jumped from the cops to the binder to my bruised wrist. Something snapped. Why are you doing this? He burst out. Why won't you just let go? You're miserable, you hate the stairs, you're always so tired, but you just hang on and drag everyone down. Derek, Megan hissed. I didn't answer him. I walked to the coffee table and set the binder down, sliding it toward Knox. What's that? She asked. Insurance, trusts, logs, video, everything, I said. Megan lunged, blocking her. You don't need to look at that, she gets confused. The younger officer stepped between them. Ma'am, back up. Knox flipped the binder open just enough to see tabs, dates, the envelope labeled video Walker/PILLS. Her jaw clenched. Derek saw her reaction and panicked. Mom, just tell them you misunderstood, he rushed out. Say you mixed your meds or something, you don't have to do this to us. I'm not the one who left me in a parking lot, I said. Megan's breathing hitched, then she collapsed into a chair, sobbing on cue. I can't take this, she wailed. I cook, I clean, I manage her pills because she doesn't follow directions, and now you're calling it abuse. I was just trying to help. By doubling her dose, Knox asked calmly, by talking about exposure and peaceful passings. Megan froze mid-sob. Derek jerked forward. You weren't supposed to hear that, he shouted. If the cold didn't do it, the pills were supposed to, that's what she said. Both of you stop talking, Knox snapped. You're incriminating yourselves. Lucas stepped in front of me, arms spread. Please stop, he begged, voice cracking, please. I reached past him, picked up the little evidence bag with the 4 pills and set it on top of the open binder. I'm done lying, I said. Knox's radio crackled, units on scene status. She didn't look away from us. Dispatch 42 Knox, escalating, request supervisor and detectives. We may have 2 for custody, charges pending. Megan's tears vanished. Custody, she whispered. Derek went rigid. No, no, no. Lucas stared at the cuffs on Knox's belt, then at his parents, then at me. Grandma, he whispered, terrified, what's going to happen to us? Knox stepped fully between us and them, hand resting on her cuffs, the line finally drawn in something harder than snow and silence. Megan didn't move as the cuffs clicked on her wrists. Her face was pale, eyes glassy, but there was a certain finality to the way the officer's fingers closed around her. The tears she'd been faking dried up as quickly as they came, leaving behind a tightness in her throat. No, she muttered under her breath, but it wasn't a protest, it was a prayer. No, no, no. Officer Knox didn't respond. She just gave a sharp nod, signaling the younger officer to pull Megan toward the door. Megan stumbled, her eyes never leaving mine, pleading without a sound. Behind me, Derek was shaking, hands still held out in the air like he couldn't comprehend what was happening. The officer beside him grabbed his arm, pulling him to his feet. Stop, stop, Derek shouted. We didn't do anything wrong. You're being detained for conspiracy and interference, Knox said, her voice a quiet, ironclad truth. You'll have the chance to explain yourself in front of a judge. Derek pulled away from the officer, his voice rising in panic. This isn't fair, he cried, his face twisting into something desperate. Mom, tell them it's all a mistake. I didn't say anything. Mom, he reached for me, but the officer stepped between us, hands firm on Derek's shoulders, pushing him back with the force of a man who had seen too many wild animals in too many cages. I didn't flinch. The door slammed shut behind them, and silence fell over the house like a cold, suffocating blanket. Outside, the sounds of sirens had faded into the distance, but the quiet street still felt full of noise. The soft rustle of leaves, the distant hum of traffic, and now footsteps. Footsteps gathering on the sidewalk, murmurs passing between the neighbors standing outside their front doors, wondering, whispering. What's going on, Mrs. Hale? Are you okay? I heard the sirens. Is everything all right? Their voices floated through the open window, as close as the air itself. I turned my head slightly toward the window, but my eyes never left the empty space where Megan and Derek had been. Are you okay? Lucas whispered from beside me, his voice small. I turned to him, my hand reaching out, brushing his hair back from his forehead. He was standing beside me now, the soft hum of the streetlight outside making his face look younger, more vulnerable than it ever had before. He hadn't moved since the officers took his parents away. I'm fine, I said, my voice softer than I intended. You're safe now. He nodded slowly but didn't seem convinced. His small hand found mine and squeezed it tightly. From the corner of my eye, I saw Knox talking to the other officers outside, the red and blue lights flashing in staccato rhythm, casting shadows against the nearby houses. I didn't need to ask what was next. I already knew. I let the weight of the moment settle into me, feeling the cool air rush through the cracks in the window. It was over. The people who had planned to end my life, who had believed my silence meant consent, were gone. But the battle, I knew, wasn't over yet. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out, glancing at the number. Samuel Trent, I answered immediately. Mrs. Hale, he said, his voice smooth and calm. We've filed immediate restraining orders for you. Financial freeze orders are already in place. Everything is locked down, they won't be touching a thing. I looked at the empty hallway, the place where Derek and Megan used to stand. My pulse was steady, calm. I swallowed the tightness in my throat. Thank you, I said, but I'm not finished. You've done everything you need to, he said. Everything's in motion, you've protected yourself and Luca's, they won't get another chance. I looked down at Luca's, his small hand still clutching mine. His face was still troubled, still too young for all of this, but I saw the flicker of something else in his eyes, a quiet understanding. I pulled him closer. No, I said again, this time more firmly, I'm not finished yet. Outside, the neighbors were still gathered, still whispering. But inside, in the quiet of my home, the final chapter of their plans had just been written. The next morning, the evidence was undeniable. The prosecutor called just after breakfast, his voice steady. Mrs. Hale, I wanted to update you. We've filed charges. Megan Hale is facing attempted murder, elder abuse, and felony endangerment. Derek Hale is being charged with conspiracy and interference. I sat back in my chair, the weight of it sinking in. The night of the parking lot, the pills, the walker, everything was falling into place. Thank you, I said, my voice quiet but firm. What happens now? They're both being held. We're preparing for arraignment in the morning. Based on their records and the evidence, we'll request no bail. I glanced over at the binder, now tucked neatly on the table. It held the proof, the unassailable truth. Their digital trails, the searches, the loan application, the disturbing texts painted a picture too clear to deny. I sat there for a moment, letting the words settle. Can you hold them? I asked finally. I don't want them coming near my grandson. Already done, he replied. And we've frozen all their access to your accounts, including any attempts at loans or withdrawals. Their debts are no longer your problem. Good, I said, breathing a little easier. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Samuel Trent worked swiftly, filing papers for a permanent financial freeze on any accounts connected to Derek and Megan. The trust was finalized for Lucas, completely separate from any of his parents' debts, safely protecting his future. By the time evening came, the weight of the last few days started to lift, but the quiet of the house still felt different. Lucas sat next to me on the couch, his eyes still clouded with the events he couldn't fully grasp. "They're going away, right?" he asked, his voice small. "Yes," I said, my hand on his. "They're not coming back." As I spoke those words, I heard the distant sound of sirens once more, this time a sign of justice being served. The neighbors, still whispering, stood at their windows, but it was no longer my shame they watched. It was the unraveling of the lies, the ones that had held us in their grip for so long. When the doorbell rang later that night, I didn't flinch. And this time, when it opened, I knew it wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something I'd fought too long to survive. The arraignment wasn't the end of it. Megan was calm in the courtroom, as calm as a woman who'd already prepared her defense. Derek, on the other hand, looked like he was still trying to process everything, his face pale and drawn, his hands shaking. He couldn't even meet my eyes as he stood in the dock. The silence in the courtroom was thick, heavy with the weight of what had happened and the weight of what was about to be said. The prosecutor stood, tall and steady, reading through their charges. As he spoke, I glanced at the gallery, at the neighbors who had gathered, their faces a mixture of curiosity and disbelief. They had watched it all unravel, watched as Megan's perfect veneer cracked, as Derek's weakness bared itself for the world to see. Then it came, the moment I hadn't expected, the twist I hadn't seen coming. Megan's lawyer leaned in, whispered something in her ear. She turned her head, her eyes sharp and calculating, and then, without warning, she stood up. The motion was smooth, too controlled, as if she had prepared herself for this moment. "I have a statement," she said, her voice carrying through the room, cold as the steel in her gaze. The judge nodded, allowing her to speak. "I want to be clear," Megan began, her tone eerily calm, "that the parking lot wasn't the first attempt." A collective gasp echoed through the room, but Megan wasn't finished. She turned her gaze to Derek, her expression shifting slightly, almost pitying. "Derek tried twice before, the stairs, the pills, I did what I had to do." Her words were deliberate, too practiced. "I did it to protect us, to give Lucas a future without the weight of Rosemary's burden hanging over us." Derek's face went white. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. His body went rigid, every muscle pulling tight. "You," he finally whispered, but the words died before they could take shape. "You wanted it, Derek," Megan shot back, her eyes flashing. "You begged me to do it. You said if she just went away, quietly, it would solve everything." The room went dead silent. My heart stuttered in my chest, but the shock didn't last long. As the pieces fell into place, I felt a strange calm wash over me. "Derek wanted her gone," Megan continued, voice growing steadier, more confident. "But I was the one who made sure it happened. The parking lot wasn't a mistake. It was the final step in a plan we had agreed on." The prosecutor's eyes narrowed. "You're both equally culpable," he said, his voice cutting through the tension. "This isn't just about attempted murder, it's conspiracy, it's premeditation. Both of you worked together." Megan's face twisted, but there was no remorse, no regret, only the cold calculation that had driven her to this point. The prosecutor turned to the judge. "Your Honor, based on the new revelations, we are requesting enhanced charges: conspiracy to commit murder, elder abuse, tampering with medication. Their actions have been ongoing and the evidence is irrefutable." The judge nodded solemnly. "The court will take that into consideration." I turned my gaze back to Megan and Derek, feeling something crack inside me. Derek had been my son. He had been the boy I held in my arms, the boy who promised to take care of me, who swore he'd never be like his uncles. And now here he was, standing beside the woman who'd plotted my death, standing by her as if he'd never known me at all. But it was Megan's cold eyes that cut the deepest. She had never cared, not about Derek, not about Lucas, not about me. Her gaze flicked to me finally. And for the first time in this entire process, I let myself show her what I was feeling: anger, betrayal, and the overwhelming weight of every cruel thing she'd done. "I'm done," I said softly, though the words felt louder than they were. "You took everything from me, my family, my life, and now you'll take the consequences." The prosecutor's voice rose again, firm and resolute. "We're done here for today. We'll reconvene with the new charges." But as they led Megan and Derek out of the courtroom in shackles, I knew this wasn't over. The real fight had just begun. And I was ready. The courtroom felt smaller on sentencing day. No cameras, just packed benches and the low murmur of people who'd followed every twist. I sat in the front row with Lucas beside me, his hand wrapped around mine like it was the only solid thing in the room. Megan and Derek were brought in through the side door in shackles. Derek looked wrecked, eyes red, suit hanging off him like it belonged to a healthier man. Megan, as always, had fixed herself, hair smooth, lipstick on, jaw set, but the confidence she used to wear like perfume was gone. What was left was bare, ugly fear. The judge adjusted his glasses, shuffling a stack of papers. "I've reviewed the evidence once again," he said. "Video of the parking lot, Walker tampering, the recorded dinner, the searches, the financial records, your own statements in this courtroom." His gaze moved between them. This was no momentary lapse, this was a pattern. Derek started crying before the judge even finished the sentence. Real tears this time, messy and loud. "I'm sorry," he blurted. "I swear I never meant to hurt her, I panicked, I made mistakes, Megan pushed and I." His lawyer touched his arm, but it was too late. The words were already out, hanging in the air with all the other rotten things he'd said. Megan didn't cry. When the judge turned to her, she tried something else. "Your Honor," she said, voice softened, "I was overwhelmed. I was caring for an elderly woman, a struggling husband, a child. I didn't sleep, I didn't have help. I made poor choices under pressure, but I am not a monster. I love my family." She glanced at the jury box with that old, polished smile, as if she could still sell it. The judge didn't even blink. "Love does not look like searches for how long to freeze to death, Mrs. Hale." Her smile died. When it was my turn, I stood slowly. The room tilted for a second, then steadied. "I won't repeat everything you've already heard," I said. "You've seen what they did. I just want the court to understand one thing. This was my son and his wife, my family. I would have given them anything they asked for my time, my help, my home. They chose to take my life instead." I looked straight at Derek. "You didn't just leave me in the cold. You left your son without parents the minute you decided money mattered more than a heartbeat." His face crumpled. Megan stared straight ahead. "And as for Megan," I added, "she walked into my home, ate at my table, let me love her. Then she turned that trust into a weapon. I survived, many don't. I'm asking you to make sure they never get the chance to try this on anyone else." I sat, Lucas gripped my hand so tight my fingers tingled. The judge exhaled, long and slow. "Megan Hale, please rise." She did, chains clinking. "You are sentenced to 25 years to life in state prison for attempted murder, elder abuse, conspiracy, and tampering with medication." A murmur rolled through the room. Megan's knees buckled, the deputy caught her elbow. "Derek Hale, rise." He swayed as he stood. "You are sentenced to 15 years in state prison for conspiracy to commit murder, attempted elder abuse, and criminal interference. Parole eligibility after 12, contingent on full compliance and treatment." He made a sound halfway between a sob and a groan. The gavel cracked once. It sounded like something breaking clean in two. As the deputies led them away, Megan finally turned to look at me. For the first time, there was no charm, no angle. Just the dawning horror of a woman realizing every step she'd taken had walked her straight into her own cage. Derek didn't look back at all. Lucas leaned into me as the doors swung shut behind them. "Is it over?" he whispered. I watched the empty doorway where my son used to stand and felt grief and relief braid together in my chest. "It's not over," I said quietly, "but we're finally safe enough to figure out what comes next." Life settled back into a rhythm, but not the same rhythm I had known before. It was quieter, cleaner, somehow more deliberate. Every morning I woke to the soft hum of the house, the routine of the familiar, but nothing felt routine anymore. My world had been shattered, pieced back together with sharp edges and new guardrails. I had the security system installed a week after the trial. The workers came unceremoniously, drilling and bolting and making everything feel final. Cameras on the porch, sensors along the windows, a keypad by the front door. It was more than I needed, but it was exactly what I wanted. The world had tried to break me, but it wasn't going to happen again. Not here, not now. The mobility upgrades were next. New rails in the bathroom, a ramp in the back that I could navigate without struggling. The chairlift was installed along the staircase, a silent promise that I could still climb my stairs with ease, no longer worry. If I'd slip or lose my footing. Lucas stayed by my side as the work progressed, becoming my constant companion. His laughter was more frequent, a soft echo that filled the house like music. He'd ask about my day, about the progress of the house, about the new locks. He grew gentler over the weeks, and I saw the maturity settle into his features. His innocence hadn't been shattered like mine had been, but his awareness of the world had deepened. I watched how he helped, how he adjusted. The shift in him was slow, but it was there. His childhood was evolving, losing some of its bright, untarnished edges, but gaining strength and wisdom. He knew the truth. He knew how fragile life could be, how quickly things could break. Samuel Trent was there in the background, finalizing everything. The trust for Lucas was set in stone, all assets locked in place. He checked in regularly, ensuring that nothing could ever touch Lucas, no matter what happened. The finality of it, the protection for Lucas, felt like a weight lifted off my chest. I wouldn't have to worry about money or the future, not anymore. Then there was Arya Knox. She came by a few weeks later just to check in, her presence a steady comfort. "You saved yourself, Rosemary," she said as we stood in my living room, the weight of the words settling between us like a shared truth. "You don't owe anyone an explanation." I met her eyes. I just did what I had to do. She nodded, her expression softening for a moment. "We all make choices. You made the right one." Arya stayed for coffee, her steady presence like a balm. We didn't talk about Derek and Megan. We didn't need to. Their names didn't need to be spoken for me to know how far they'd fallen. A few months later, I joined a senior survivorship advocacy group. It felt like a natural progression. It was a place where people understood, where the wounds weren't just physical, where the scars were often invisible but heavy. We shared stories, listened, and supported one another. I didn't speak much at first, but gradually I found my voice. Then one evening, as the sun dipped low, I stood outside staring at the driveway. The same driveway where I'd once fallen, crumpled and broken, left by my own flesh and blood. The space felt different now, quiet, still, a place of peace where I could finally breathe. I stood there for a long moment, letting the weight of everything settle. It wasn't the driveway that had changed, it was me. "They left me in an abandoned lot," I said quietly, my words floating on the evening breeze, but I arrived home before their cruelty even cooled. The world had tried to break me, but I had survived, and now I had everything I needed to rebuild.